Hello, good morning, and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Good morning. Welcome to Abuja. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
Okay. I really wanted us to talk about that corruption story which the president, was at yesterday. Incidentally, all three arms of government were represented, but maybe we'll do that another time. Let's go straight to papers this morning. And, of course, the story everyone has been waiting for, which we even did a countdown for, is that Lekki Tollgate white paper, release of the white paper, of course. Two statements came from the Lagos State government yesterday. One, which is a press briefing, and another, which is the white paper itself, detailing the number of accepted, modified, rejected, and seconded recommendations. But all of that you'll find in the conversations we're having now. Let's begin with the Daily Trust newspaper, and that's the lead of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. ENDSAR's no killing at Lekki Tollgate, Lagos Counters panel. Why? Well, there are two riders to that story on the front page. Government accepts 11 recommendations. Campaigners reject Sanwo-Olu's overtures. The story you'll find on page 5 of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. Definitely a lot of reaction to this one already, a lot of reactions to this already, but all of that you will find in our conversations this morning. Right under the picture you see there of youth corps members performing a tug of war during the swearing in of another batch of corpers. 20 die as boat capsizes with 47 pupils, others in Kano. Oh dear, stories on page 5. Poor visibility hampers rescue operation. I don't even know what to make of this, but the story is on page 5 of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. 257 projects worth 20 billion naira duplicated in 2021 budget ascribed to guess who? Yes, that's it on the front page, right under the nameplate, ICPC. Find the details on page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. Markwe.
Well, let's take a look at leadership. They have this one. Health insurance. Poor services put 12 million patients at odds with hospitals, HMOs. It's a page 4 read there. Hospitals treat us with substandard drugs. That's according to subscribers. We can't go beyond the amount approved by HMOs. That's according to hospitals. Our branded drugs will address and release concerns, so says NHIS. You have all the details on page 4, but leadership has decided to do a big story on health insurance and how it works. And how oftentimes, even though they're telling more and more people that health insurance is the way to go and we shouldn't pay out of pocket, how sometimes the services you seem to get with your health insurance, seems to be substandard to what you will get where you're paying out of pocket. So whoever, is interested in this story, or those who have powers to make things change this morning, had better pay good attention to the story on the front page of leadership. And just in case you're wondering, the federal government and state governments, because health is on the concurrent list. So page 4 will give you all of the details. Leadership News Morning. Uneasy calm in Kano as court nullifies former Emir Sanusi's banishment. Page 7 is where you find the story. Even though when I was reading this yesterday, I think what occurred to me was that the court ruling was pretty specific on banishment. How that's going to work is going to be very tricky. But page 7 will give you all of the details. You have just beneath the nameplate 2021 budget padded with 257 projects worth 20.138 billion. That's one of the revelations that the ICPC made at its third national summit yesterday. There are a few others. PMB vows to sanction heads of indicted MDAs. Page 7 will also give you all of the details. I like to see pictures of youth coppers, and just in case you're wondering what this is about, what the salute is about, is the swearing-in ceremony of 2021 Batch C, Stream 2, orientation course at Kubwa in Abuja yesterday. That will be it for leadership newspapers.
Nigerian Tribune is still interested in Lagos government white paper. Lagos government white paper picks holes in ENDSAR's panel report. Stories on page 3. Report that 9 protesters were killed at Lekki, an assumption. It says, accepts 11 out of 32 recommendations. Sanwo-Olu calls for harmony, invites Falls, Macaroni, Shagalink, others for peace walk. That peace walk is in parentheses. Find out why in the story. Macaroni Falls, Sheun Kuti declined invitation. All of that you'll find on the inside pages this morning. About the nameplate, jailbreaks. Senate wants special prison for high-profile criminals. What does that mean, really? The details you'll find on the inside pages. Summon Interior Minister, AGF, NCS, CG, Nababa over spate of jailbreaks. Why we can't deploy technology in prisons. Well, that's according to the Comptroller General. Find out the reason given on page 13. Beside that one, court declares Sanusi's banishment illegal. Orders Kano government to pay him 10 million naira. Must apologize to him in 2 national dailies. The story is on page 28 of the paper this morning. And so many other stories. Let me just take this one and then we flip. Nigeria's population projection scary. Who's saying that? It's the federal government. Stories on page 13. That's the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
Well, let's look at the Vanguard. And interestingly, they have a story on the economy. Captured or captioned very in an interesting manner. Look at that. Omicron infects oil. No, oil doesn't have COVID, just in case you're wondering. Omicron infects oil. Bunny Light falls to $73 from $85 per barrel as experts harp on diversification. Ramp up COVID-19 vaccine stock. Consider implementation of booster doses. Needs tasks federal government. Airports on alert. Intense screening of passengers from affected countries ongoing at Abuja, Lagos airports. African genes could have weakened COVID-19 virus in new Omicron variant, says Obaje, Singapore-based Nigerian research scientist. And NAFDAC says Nigeria will soon begin vaccine production. You have all the details on page 5. A very interesting revelation came out yesterday, though, about this Omicron. Even though South Africa was the first to cry out, it seems it's been detected, or it was detected in another country, the Netherlands, before it eventually, was made known to the world by South Africa. So perhaps this is not an African variant after all. Excuse me. There are a few other stories on the front page here. Furore over Orji Kalu's visit to Kanu in DSS custody. That's also on the front page. ENDSAR's report. Lagos government overrules panel report. Court declares Sanusi's banishment from Kano illegal. That's also there. And for those who are looking to invest somewhere, MTN offers retail investors 21 Naira price discount as digital public offer opens today. It's on page 2 of the paper. A few other stories on the front page, but I'm going to leave you to do that yourself. Let's leave it there for the Vanguard, unless you want to look at Vanguard Sports, but let's leave it there. And also leave out Aya's favorite Mr. and Mrs. You have to pick up a copy of the Vanguard to see it this time, sorry.
Maybe it will be my turn to protest, but, I'll have to gather a critical mass to do that. The Guardian newspaper. Subsidy removal won't spike inflation, says World Bank. That's the lead of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Data contradict Chaduri's argument. Social scheme doesn't benefit majority of poor people. Nigeria tops tables of all wrong data. Wow. An economy cannot grow faster with business as usual management approach. Story continues on page 2. Well, it's World AIDS Day, and there is a not too pleasant story you'll find on page 2. Headline on the front page: 1.9 million Nigerians living with HIV, infection rates not decreasing fast enough. We've been hearing about this since the 80s, and we're still here. The story is on page 2 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. No deaths at Lekki toll gate, says Lagos government in ENDSAR's white paper. Find the details on the inside pages today.
New Telegraph. Thank you. Well, New Telegraph is the next one now. This is what you find on the front page. Investigation: 26,297 terror suspects. Family members surrender in 4 months as military steps up counter-insurgency war. Exhaustion, cause of surrendering. That's according to retired commandant. So it's on page 5 of the paper, just in case you're wondering why they're surrendering. Not that they're repentant. They're tired. That seems to be the reason. That's what this retired commandant is saying. But page 4 is where you find details. 26,297 terror suspects, family members surrender in 4 months. A significant number. And you also see this here: court voids deposed Emir of Kano Emir Sanusi's banishment, says Kano's emirate chieftain law in conflict with 1999 constitution, awards 10 million naira damages, orders Kano government, DSS, police to tender public apology. It's also on the front page. Improved earnings boost investor stake by 628 billion naira as market cap closes at 22.566 trillion naira. So it looks like the stock market is seeing some improvement. Page 4 will give you details. Additional to federal government, low tax to GDP, not licensed for frequent tax hike. It's also on page 5 of the paper. A number of other stories are just beneath the nameplate, but they also have that report for you. ENDSAR's Lagos releases white paper, false JPI report, says massacre claim based on speculations, assumptions, partially accepts recommendations on police operation and welfare. Details on page 3 of the paper. Let's leave it there for New Telegraph.
Let's fly through the Nigerian News Direct. PIA, $5 multi-billion upstream project suspended to take FID in 2022. That's according to the NNPC, as indigenous firms tackle IOCs on vendor registration. Find that story on page 2, among several others this morning. That's the papers this morning. We switch to the issues for the day right after now. Just stay with us.
Apart from the chairman of the panel being a respected retired jurist, various stakeholders, including the youth, ENDSAR protesters themselves, the police, and civil society groups were all represented on the panel. While I commend the panel for undertaking its tasks to the best of its abilities, it is, however, regrettable that the panel's work and a leakage of an unauthorized version of the report has generated tension. Sadly, a deep wound has been reopened. The heated exchanges among various shades of opinion on the report have unfortunately put us at the risk of meeting a larger picture. The fact that what we all seek is common is a land in which we're all safe and secure. Law enforcement agents are trusted and justice is guaranteed for all. Let me therefore use this occasion to extend an open invitation to all of our youths, members of the diplomatic corps, civil society groups, students, gentlemen of the press, media, and other stakeholders to join me. I would want Folarin Falanon, popularly called Fowles. I would want Debo Adebayo, Mr. Macaroni. I would want an activist lawyer, Mr. Dele Farotimi. I would want Temitope Majekodumi. I would want Mr. Shegun Awosonya. I want Adetong, just Detong, who draws me every day. I want legendary son of Fela Seun Kuti. I would also want the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Akim Odumusi. I want the Commander of the RRS, CSP Yinka Egbeyemi, to join me on this historic march for their Lagos.
Well, that's our first conversation this morning. It's been 2 weeks, and of course that countdown took place, and this is where we are now. Well, all of the recommendations and everything you want to find there, but then some other information will come to us later. Just to quickly notify you that we understand that we've recorded, Nigeria has recorded its first case of the dreaded Omicron variant of coronavirus, COVID-19, but more details of that will come on later on. But to the conversation at hand, let's invite two gentlemen with us this morning, joining us to have this conversation. First, we bring you Adesina Ogunlana, who is a legal practitioner and lawyer to ENDSAR's campaigners. He's also former chairman of the Nigeria Bar Association in Ikeja. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. And we also have with us Ligbrus Oshoma, who is a legal practitioner. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Ayo.
Well, Mr. Adesina, the white paper has been released. 32 recommendations in the report. The state government accepts 11, 6 with modifications, 14 out of its own purview sent to the federal government, and 1 rejected outrightly. Excuse me. And that's, I believe, from only 1 report. What's your take on that one, first of all?
Well, thank you so much. I too heard that news late yesterday evening. I've just been getting snippets, not really the full report as it were, but the summary about the ones accepted, the one not accepted, or accepted with modification, and then the one sent over to the federal government, being stated as being outside the purview of the powers of the state government to implement, and one rejected. Well, what I would say is this, on the surface, it's fair enough. You have 32, you have 11 fully accepted, you have 6 also accepted, but with modification, that will give you 17. You have 14 sent over to the federal government to consider.
That's not a rejection.
That's not rejection. So 1 is rejected. Well, it will appear to me that the government of Lagos State is just, with due respect to the governor or the head of the state, that is Mr. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, is trying to, a little to the right, a little to the left, as Yoruba people will say, Shoto Sosi, ma barin je. They're trying to please everybody. I mean, a balancing act. But to the extent of, if what I've read so far is correct, to the extent of the government emphatically rejecting a finding of a massacre, I do not agree with the government. And I think the reasons given are not good or strong enough.
You think so? Because, excuse me, earlier in the day, yesterday, the governor gave a speech and said that it's all going to be based on truth. But then he also said in the findings that in the response to the white paper, look, that even in the report of the panel, there were no hard evidence to confirm that indeed there were so many bodies. You said you attended, so why
I do not, with due respect to the governor, you see, I do not agree with him, even though I'm not surprised that his government has decided to take this tack. I'm not surprised because, like I pointed out earlier, not today, that the idea of set up a white paper to review a report in itself is a system shield. There is a jurisprudence behind that. But because our systems are borrow ropes, agwawewu, people say that if you borrow a rope and dress yourself up, it's either it will tighten you in the neck or it will be too short in the knees, as it were, you know. That's what has happened. There's a jurisprudence. The idea of when you have a report and then there will be a kind of review suggests accountability, responsibility, you know, on the part of the government. Because if you look at it, you are the government that sets off a white paper, what do you call it, a panel of inquiry. The panel has labored and interacted actually with people who cared to come out as witnesses, whether summoned or otherwise, and all that. And then they've come up with a report. The idea of reviewing itself is not that it's bad. But because it is the government again, the initiator, the appointer, that is again reviewing, this time exclusively by its own agents and all that, you'll find out that at the level of our political development, of maturity, that idea of just being purely objective is still not yet ripe. Okay,
let me take the comments of Mr. Sharma on this. You've read the report, I hope. You have also seen the response of government, the white paper and all of that.
Yes.
What's your own position on this?
Yeah, I need us to understand that first and foremost, like my learned colleague has said, if government accepts 36 out of 37, that's an A+, in my opinion. But the bone of contention here is the issue of was there massacre or no massacre. I will get to that shortly, but we also need to understand that the panel was cloaked in two functions, two judicial functions. That one is the quasi-judicial and then also investigative robe. And we all know as lawyers that prosecution starts from investigation. And even police, when they conclude investigation, their investigation is subjected to the Ministry of Justice, who will look at it with the eagle eye vis-a-vis the provisions of the law, whether a prima facie case has been established on the basis of the investigation made. So as, like we all know, that it is better for 99 accused persons to go scot-free than one innocent person to be convicted for a crime he did not commit. So against that backdrop, it is also pertinent to note that normally at the High Court or at the Magistrate Court, the judge sits to listen to the witnesses, the demeanor of witnesses, and then give a verdict one way or the other. But at the appellate level, the judges of the appeal court are not seized of that privilege of interacting with the witnesses. But they look at the records and take a decision one way or the other. And so, the people that did a disservice to the report are those people that actually leaked the report. And when I am an apostle of change, and I did a video on ENDSAR, which I said we are all SARS. And I was expecting that the panel would reveal truly the truth of what transpired. But when I read the report, the leaked report, I told myself, I said, I pray that this is not what was submitted to the government. Because if this is what is submitted to the government, the contradictions, the errors were too manifest for a discerning mind to swallow hook, line, and sinker.
Are you then expecting the government
and quickly,
to...
quickly,
just one second.
Ayo.
On that same issue, just before you go on, are you then suggesting that the government should release the original white paper that was sent to it?
The document, that's why...
The report.
That is why I'm giving you snippets. And so, in the government rejection of that recommendations, quickly, if you permit me, the government said the evidence of the pathologist, Professor Bafuwo, that only 3 bodies that he conducted post-mortem examination on were from Lekki and only 1 had gunshot injury. And this was not debunked. The state, the findings of 9 deaths at the Lekki toll gate on 20th of October is even more baffling because apart from listing out their names in that form at page 297 to 298, the Judicial Panel of Inquiry offered no explanation regarding circumstances of their death. The names simply sprang up at page 297 to 298 of the report without any justification. Also, it is quite astonishing that in the list of 11 deaths set at that same page, the names Kolade Salam, Folorusho Olabisi at number 37 and 34 appear twice. Furthermore, the person listed as Nathaniel Solomon, who testified as a witness and petitioned the panel in respect of his brother, who allegedly died, himself was listed as dead on the 20th. Nathaniel Solomon's brother, Abata Solomon, was also listed as number 2 on the list. So I think with all of this manifest inconsistency, that's why I'm saying that the panel should have sat down to do a thorough job on their report so as to give, not to give room for such recommendations from the government. Because against the backdrop of the fact that that definitely somebody else will review this document, you don't make such manifest error.
Okay.
And quite quickly on the last note, the government also stated, which I also believe, that you jettison the evidence of a pathologist that was before you and then rely on hearsay evidence of a video of one Olakule that was not before you. So as a lawyer, really, for me as a discerning Nigerian, these are some of the things I look at and I tell myself, the panel actually did a disservice to that fact.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Oxlade.
Well, I must, with due respect, disagree in part a lot with my learned friend because I'm not sure he participated. I did. And he's taking the governor's, or let me say the government's statement today.
Allow him, Mr. Ashman.
No problem.
He's taking it hook, line, and sinker as if it's the only rate that is God speaks truth. That is not true. In fact, when he referred to Professor Obafunwa, the pathologist, you understand, did he even know the history that led to Obafunwa's statement and what context Obafunwa was speaking? The records of 99 people were presented. But as bodies recovered, these are bodies recovered by government agencies, but all over the state, not just Lekki. That out of these 99, 3 were said to be from Lekki. And out of all the 3 are dead. Out of the 3, they say 2 died of blunt injuries and everything, and then one was perforated by a projectile. That is the evidence by the pathologist. That is not the only person who came to give evidence. There are a whole lot of people that gave evidence, especially eyewitnesses' account. If I believe my learned friend does not really know the details like I know, and I'm sure that it cannot be, it is not the position that, the only evidence of death before that panel was the only one of Professor Obafungwa.
But the issues that have been raised, a number of people have also raised it, that, you know, did you also see gaps in the
I'm coming to that. I said in part. There's areas I agree with him, okay, and I understand the reason for it. And it's unfortunate that you have a situation where you see people take advantage of a situation they create. And in this respect, I'm referring to the government of Lagos. I believe that report is not tidy enough. It's not 100% tidy. And this is why I agree with him that in the case of Solomon Abuta and Nathaniel, these were my clients. So I knew, to the extent that Abuta, as Nathaniel Solomon, was the one who gave evidence about his brother, and credible evidence that was not faulted. And if that is not the person said to have died under Obafungwa, he gave evidence about his brother who died, who was shot, and I was picked up at 9 p.m. by himself and his sister and all those kind of a thing. But Nathaniel Solomon did not die. You understand? And why all this happened is this. When we were at that panel, my side of legal representation to ENDSAR something continue to insist that this panel being twin-headed is overworked. The time is not enough. The panel itself allowed itself to be railroaded into just working with a very, very tight. You are handling matters of SARS brutality, the normal ones. At the same time, you are the one handling the one of Lekki investigation. I think a week ago, about 10 days ago, my learned friend, the senior advocate who go for government himself, now said, I thought part of the mistake of government was not to have separated these panels. But before the panel, he did not maintain that position. The position is that the time is good enough, the time is good enough. I blame the panel for knowing, like he said, if you know you are going to be reviewed, you should have insisted that, look, this time is simply not enough. In fact, we are the only side complaining that this time is not enough. And so when he mentioned about Abuta, that's a good point, but it's not enough. And even the issue of duplication of names, 2 names, you know, when you say 11 names, so when you review, and you look at these obvious slips, I mean, Karim could know 2 different people. So,
no, I just wanted to, because...
and then finally, I want to say, and that if other sources of information come before the panel about deaths, you look at the probative value. It's not so the government was wrong in saying that they rated some other evidence about death more than the the pathologist. Pathologists did not say that only 3 people. They said all the bodies brought to us.
Okay, all right, Mr. Shoma. There is the responsibility of hard evidence, but then there is the responsibility of eyewitnesses. It would seem like the law has a tough task of verifying eyewitnesses as opposed to hard evidence.
Exactly. And so for me, I don't, not being a member of the panel, and so many other people who are not members of the panel, what we will rely on will be the reports coming from the panel. And so if the report coming from the panel is filled up with inconsistencies And thank God my learned colleague had admitted that the panel had a two-handed, a hydra-headed function.
We'll come to the, my apologies.
Enormous.
We'll come to the second part, because it would seem like everyone is looking at just this one report, but while the other one has some value to it. But speak to the issue of evidence versus eyewitnesses. How do we confirm eyewitness accounts in law, for instance? Because it would seem like right now there are more eyewitness evidences than hard evidence.
No, when you talk about hard evidence and eyewitnesses account, the only document we will consistently refer to will be the report. If you look at the content of the report, if you look at the content, the conclusions reached, the panel, the evidence, I raised the evidence of a hearsay evidence of Olakunle, a video that the panel also relied on to say that on the basis of this testimony from this video, that so and so persons died. So all of that, when you do that, you're creating doubt in your own report, that anybody that reads it would find missing link. That's why consistently I have blamed the panel for not doing a tidy job. If, like he has said, Lagos State government wanted to look for loopholes. The panel created those loopholes for Lagos State government. That's basically simply what I'm saying here. You're talking about eyewitnesses. Some of the eyewitnesses said they couldn't come out because they were scared. Others that came out quickly, if you look at the report also, the eyewitnesses that came out relied on evidence of also other persons that were not there. I am quoting the content of the report. I'm not talking about what transpired at the panel. I'm talking about the content of the report. If unfortunately my phone is not here, I just read snippet from the recommendations that I have, I would have also, point page by page to you, because I read it. That's why I said the disservice to this job was done by those that leaked the report, not me.
Well, the issue is not whether a report was leaked or not. With due respect to my learned friend, you see, the point is that the Lagos State government, by its governor, by his
trust. How then do we put this to rest? Because it will seem like even with this white paper of government, the issue is anything but resolved in the heart of the people.
I quite agree with you. It's ironic that the government or the governor who speaks about trust deficit himself is suffering from that particular deficit. The white paper that was released has even heated up the politics more. Because when you look, I listened to him, I read the speech yesterday. It was quite fine English, fine verse, and I must appreciate the script writer and all that. But the impact, there was very little sympathy with the people. Let me put a very simple example. You're on the road, you're on your right, and unfortunately, something happened with a bicyclist or a bike rider and all that kind of a thing, Now, what is important is somebody is injured. You understand? If you are a good person, if you're a humane person, it's not a matter of, you cause it yourself and then you move on. You want to address that situation. Because you want to, who is the aggrieved person? Even in our domestic relations, if you're a sensible husband or wife, you sometimes you say sorry, even when you are right, because you follow the African pattern of trying to do community relation.
So that's what you are recommending to
what you find out from this part, the people, of course, the people, the injured party, nobody said at Lekki that military died. Nobody said at Lekki that police died. Nobody said that Lekki, anybody's property was burnt.
Yeah, that's not to say that didn't happen to them in other parts of the state.
No, that is not what I'm saying.
Okay.
What I'm saying, we are talking about Lekki investigation. And it is specific to that location. And I'll still come to the other ones that happened, because we shouldn't change the narrative. Yeah. We are talking of the ENDSAR riot that was terminated brutally that day, violently by the security forces, the military in particular. Now, what I'm trying to say is that when they came up with the idea of a peace work, like he said, the youths have responded. We are asking of justice. We are talking of peace work. You mentioned some names. I've spoken to 2 of them. They said 1, nobody discussed that with them. Then to say who? Me, work with him. Macaroni make a parody of this. Shemkuti made a parody of it. Falana and the junior made a parody of it, call it a sick joke or something. And you could see that this idea, okay, for example, you say there's no massacre, but that's your report, that's your white paper, did not say indeed there was violence. I mean, that's fair admission. Then, in fact, there is unwarranted violence. And you should go on to say, that even as at the time you are even enforcing whatever you are enforcing or preventing whatever you are preventing, the people at that gate, at that toll gate, were peaceful, were non-violent, and it was before the hours of the curfew. There was nothing like that. So, and that they did not provoke the attack.
Even though he referenced it earlier and said that it was largely peaceful, even he himself was there.
No, no, I'm not talking of. I'm talking of the 28th. Up to 28th, I mean, it was nothing. But that 28th, this is part of healing. You know, I know that, in fact, let me tell you, as a council appearing for this ENDSAR people, it was despite opposition within the House. They said, 1, the panel cannot bring any positive report indicting government. Then 2, if it ever happens, the government is never going to accept a report indicting it. I said we'll push forward. As far as we are concerned, government has lived up to its traditional reputation of not being accountable to the people. You just say there's no massacre, but at the same time you say at least 1 person died. You understand? And I'll give you another example of person that I know died, that was my client and all that. But you are
by the definition of massacre, well, those instances you mentioned do not meet the
massacre means 1 million people should die?
No, massacre means a large number of people.
The
dictionary is quite clear.
No. You see,
is there a different definition of massacre in law?
Just a minute, please. Even assume so by your definition.
No, it's a dictionary.
Hold on. Even by that your own understanding of the dictionary meaning, it will mean that 9 people. Assuming the government will accept the 9 people or accept 11 people. Well, will you say 11 people out of a crowd of about 5,000 people or 3,000 that night will be large? I
am not making a case. Mr. Ogunlana, just a second, just to be clear.
Okay.
I'm not making any case for anyone. I'm just speaking to the word massacre, an indiscriminate and brutal slaughter of many people. That's what the dictionary says. A simple Google search will tell you that one. If we look at...
just a minute. When you say many, the issue now, maybe I'm talking as a linguist and as a lawyer, what is many? What is many to you?
Cambridge Dictionary, an act of killing a lot of people.
Yes.
That's a massacre. And the example is this. He ordered the massacre of 2,000 women and children.
Oh, thank you so much. So
that's Cambridge Dictionary.
Let me react now.
Okay, go ahead.
That Cambridge Dictionary, that means even if 200 people had been killed, it's not a massacre now. That's nonsense. Just a minute, please. That is nonsense definition.
Well,
if it means 2,000, that means 200 people.
Well, I guess law has to give us a different definition of massacre. We'll take a short break, gentlemen, to take a few messages, and when we return, we'll continue this conversation. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Mr. Adeshina Ogunlana as well as Liberal Sashoma, both legal practitioners, are still here with us. Well, Mr. Ogunlana, you participated in the panel sittings for quite a while. My apologies. Let's switch gears to the next issue. So, the second report, we don't seem to be talking too much about that one, which is the crux of the matter, the real reason that government set up the panels in the first place, cases of police brutality and all of that. How significant do you see whatever report or white paper comes from government on that one? How significantly do you see it healing?
Well, thank you. And I was there. I want to appreciate the panel and the government that funded that panel and provided the funds, unlike some other states where their own problem of stagnation is not because of anything other than there were not enough money to empower them to do their work. You know, in Lagos, there was reasonable funding in respect of that, and you have to appreciate the government for that. Even before then, you remember that the government of Lagos, as Mr. Governor himself said yesterday, had actually given money, or funds rather, to police personnel who suffered losses or who died and all that. I mean, I think 10 million or 20 million and this kind of thing. So one thing we take away from that aspect is that actually that panel did so well for the ordinary human being vis-a-vis compensation, evaluation of compensation and compensation to affected people brutalized much better than the Nigerian court system. The Nigerian court system has a problem. Despite all the delays, after you might have won your case in court, in brutality matters and everything, my learned friend will attest to that very readily, that you hardly get the compensation. There will be a lot of blockage, police simply will not pay, there will be a lot of things. So to the extent that, in fact, this kind of a special tribunal should now be created to, especially Lagos, you know, we are the densest in terms of population. About now, governor says it's 22 million. I read that yesterday. I thought it was 20, but this is 22. Where is the governor? Should know better. With 22 million people, and with only 55 or 60 high courts that we have in Lagos for the state high court, maybe 23 at the federal level, it's grossly inadequate. If there's a panel that can quickly evaluate, you know, the issues of brutality, actually, abuses, generally, they are not so difficult to prove. So I would say that really, a lot of people, there are people that shed tears of joy, even though there are people who mourned that, well, this money given, especially when people died, that cannot really replicate the lives of their dead ones, but it's still better than nothing. I appreciate the government in that respect. I appreciate the panel. Like I said, about 420 million was given. Somebody may say it's paltry, because when you go to high court, they may give you even 500 million, 100 million on paper. In actuality, in actuality, you are just seeing it. Okay. You will never touch it. So to that extent, I think kind of state institution or a special agency for human rights abuses, of course, not to take away from what my learned friend has said about the retraining of the police, like the panel itself. We have been saying that all along.
But you also, how about the part where, you know, the protesters were asking for a complete overhaul of the welfare system for the police? What are some of those recommendations made on that one?
You see, I remember ACP Dubono. That's the head of operations police in Lagos, who came to testify. We had a chat after the something, and the gentleman was saying, ordinarily, why should we all be opposed to what these people are saying? They are talking about better welfare for us. You see, when you give somebody the power of arrest and you harm him in a very poor economy like this, the tendency as a human being to survive by abusing his power is high. I think the police are not only personally paid poor salaries, there is a deliberate sabotage of the police by the Nigerian state. Do you know, I've evaluated this as a lawyer. Why do the police tend to torture? You may easily say, oh, they just like violence. No. Do you know why they torture? They want to extract evidence by force. Why? Because of absence of almost nothing about forensics. Meanwhile, when you confront a criminal, no matter how doing, with forensic evidence, the man was like when the police cracked the case in Festac.
Do you think that the panel report addressed that, these concerns that you have raised? I'll come to you, Mr.
Well, I think they said the welfare, they recommended it, okay. But the retrain is there too. But I'm not too sure whether this point I'm making. Okay. The police of Nigeria is working with severe handicap.
Okay. Well, Mr. Shoma, same questions concerning the real issue, the real reasons for which the panel was set up. You wanted to talk about it earlier, that cases of police brutality and all of that. Yeah. Do you see the panel doing justice to that part, the report, and the expectations of the people from the white paper?
Yes, to answer your question directly, yes, I was quite happy, which is why I also believe the position of my learned friend that we ought to have had 2 panels and not one. One specifically for the Lekki Tollgate issue, and then the other one on human rights violations and police brutality generally. And so that's why you see this argument back and forth. Why some people are in a hurry to establish that there was massacre at Lekki. The government also is in a hurry to say there was no massacre, and they completely left out the other issues that will lead to healing. That said, you also agree that Nigerian police, apart from this extracting evidence by force, there's what they call the return system in the Nigerian police. The police is largely underfunded. As at about 2 years ago, I think the IG of police cried out that of the police total budget, only 20% was released. And that 20% was not even enough. You find out that the average policeman, quote me, the average police station in Nigeria earns 15,000 naira monthly as impressed. And that is if you see the money. The day you complain as a police DPO, they'll tell you you're tired of your job. So what now happens is,
so that seems to indicate, Mr. Shoma, that it would seem like, you know, there is no end in sight to the issues that arose in the first place.
There is no end in sight to it. I can tell you that there's no end in sight to it. This we're talking about recommendations now, and the Lagos State government, mind you, over the weekend, right on this station, a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, even though he was expressing his own opinion, also, you know, queried the legality and the constitutionality of the state government to set up, you know, the panel. And now the recommendations had been made to the federal government agencies. And the governor has said, I'm going to take those recommendations to the federal government, even though the spokesperson of the federal government has said we will implement the part that concerns us. But it is obvious that our police system, go to the barracks, and that's why I was talking about this return system. So a situation where DPO does not have money to run the station. So he will rely on the boys, and the boys will rely on you and I. And, you know, in most cases, you extract this money by compulsion. And when you are sent out with guns to make money for and on behalf of the station, you also want to make money for yourself. So that's what led to all of these rights abuses. And there is no enforcement mechanism for abuses. And like we said, do
you think, my apologies, do you think the Human Rights Committee that is also proposed in the report would help solve this issue?
I think to a large extent it will, if the federal government is interested and involved in it.
Okay.
Because you also agree that the police, the state governor does not command the police commissioner.
And so that's why he has also sent those recommendations.
Exactly. So
just a second, because we have to begin the round off now. So, Mr. Shoma, how optimistic are you that the 14 recommendations that the governor promised to refer to the federal government, how optimistic are you that something will be done at the federal level?
Unfortunately, we are in a government that a lot of things are left undone, even though those that have been promised to be done, including those that have been promised to be done. So that's why I'm not optimistic that anything would be done. We're back to where we were just before the protest. And also,
just Mr. Shoma, I'm sorry, we really have to round.
No, quickly, a few seconds, please, quickly.
10 seconds.
Yes, 10 seconds. Like I said, it is not enough for the state governor to call out people on a march. Let him start actually by healing the process, identifying and admitting that indeed a lot of things went wrong. And then once you begin to correct those things, people ordinarily will go out and say, yes, we trust this government.
All right.
Okay. Want to march with
yes, sir. How optimistic are you?
Not optimistic at all.
Okay.
All promises cancelled.
let's get it done. Well, Mr. Adesina Ogulano is a legal practitioner and counsel to the ENDSAR campaigners. He is also former chairman of Nigerian Bar Association Ikeja branch, as well as Libros Oshoma, who is a legal practitioner. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time this morning. Sunrise Daily continues right after now with another issue. Do stay with us.
Well, we're looking at another issue indeed. And the issue we're looking at has been an issue that's been a threat to all of us, at least since the start of 2020. COVID-19 hasn't gone away. According to WHO, we might be done with COVID-19, but COVID-19 isn't done with us. So we have seen this virus mutate into different forms, into different variants, so to speak. We've seen, I think, the one we saw before the new one was the Delta variant, which we were told was very dangerous. And now South Africa, cried just about last week or thereabouts about a new variant that they had noticed. And we all know the name now, Omicron. New developments around that particular variant, and there's still a lot more information coming out. But the latest information for Nigeria this morning is that we have now detected our very first Omicron variant carrier in the country, someone who was coming in from South Africa. So there are questions as to whether or not we should review our protocols, what it is that we're doing internally to continue to stem the spread of COVID-19. There are a lot more questions, but we have someone who's capable, who should have the answers for us this morning. Dr. Ifedayo Adetifa is the new, yes, and I say new for a reason, Director General at the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I don't know, should we say welcome to, I don't know whether to say welcome to the NCDC, because we don't work at the NCDC, but you have taken over from Dr. Chikwe Ihikwazu, who was there for a while and who led the country through the initial uncertainty of the coronavirus. How has your first month been since you have been at the NCDC?
Well, it has been good so far in terms of the warm welcome and offers of support that I've received. Obviously, there's a lot to do. There's a lot that the NCDC does, and it's been a period spent trying to catch up with all of the activities, while, of course, responding to ongoing issues such as cholera in particular, which is not receiving, I think, as much attention as it should. And then, of course, we've got to deal with other contending issues like, the National Assembly and oversight functions of its respective committees, and the general preparation for the end of the year.
Have you had that already, oversight visits?
No, I have had to go to the National Assembly for budgetary visits, defense, for, along with the ministry, to the loans, debts, and AIDS committee, and so on.
Okay, well, you have received quite a hot welcome, not a warm one, but definitely. I mean, it comes with the line of work. I mean, NCDC before now, not a lot of people were aware of the work of NCDC or the work it did until the COVID-19 breakout. But as you said, there's been also a lot of vows of support, and you can be sure that we will certainly give you our own support as, as much as the NCDC needs it. However, there are fears right now. Omicron is a new variant of COVID-19, which the South African authorities have just brought to our attention. However, news also came out yesterday that Dutch authorities are saying that they had seen Omicron before now, that South Africa just let it known. So is this an unnecessary alarm, or is this something that we really need to be concerned about?
I think that the appropriate response to that, if I paraphrase what the U.S. president said, is the news of this variant is, while it's a cause for concern, it's not a cause for alarm. And I think it's important to repeat that message or reiterate it, because there's a lot that we do not know. So the appropriate action is caution. And as has been revealed by the Dutch authorities, they probably had Omicron long before the South Africans reported it. But now, even in your introductory remarks and a lot of what people say, South Africa has been labeled as the source of this variant. But what has probably happened is that this variant is already everywhere. And the question really is not if it will be detected across the world, but when.
This is extremely important. The announcement of the Dutch authorities yesterday was extremely significant, especially when you look at the protocols that many parts of the world had already begun to adopt towards Africa. South African authorities and even campaigners around COVID-19 have said that if COVID-19, it would seem that from the response that we've seen so far, if COVID-19 had originated from Africa, it would seem that the world would have shut out Africa completely. So it is important that Dutch authorities have said, look, we discovered this first. But does it mean, I mean, should we be reviewing our own protocols in Africa in terms of how we have handled this particular disease?
Well, it depends on what you mean by protocol. Are we talking about surveillance? Are we talking about case management? Are we talking about the overall response? I think it's important. Hindsight has 20/20 vision is what people say. The response to a pandemic with a pathogen no one has previously expected cannot be perfect. And there's no better evidence of that than how literally all of the countries of the world were caught napping when this broke out. I mean, even the countries that were expected to be, high there in terms of their emergency preparedness and response. So we've had to learn, you basically crawl, walk, and run at the same time. And what has subsequently happened is, yes, some countries have done that better than some, but we were all at a position of disadvantage when this pathogen broke. And we will continue to respond in a way that assures our health security. We can't wait for things to be perfect before we do that. And again, as we are seeing with this outbreak of this new variant, people do not always respond based on the science. There's a lot of other considerations that come into play, but we hope that, especially with the news from the Dutch authorities and maybe from others who are now probably going back, like WHO recommends, to look at their archive, their samples from either travelers or surveillance from the month of October, we will probably find out a lot more places we report the presence of this variant, and hopefully we can stop the emphasis on South Africa or Southern African countries, because this can happen to anybody.
It does raise concerns, though, about just how this virus is mutating. Do we understand why it seems to be mutating into so many variants and at the rate with which it does that?
Well, the viruses mutate. It's not new. I mean, what is new is this pathogen, SARS-CoV-2, is new. But we know from flu virus, from any viruses mutate. And what happens?
As frequently as this one has?
Yes, they do. They mutate at different frequency and depending on what type of virus. So SARS-CoV-2 is something we call an RNA virus. Most RNA viruses have frequent mutations, and I'll explain shortly what mutations mean. But it means that in the course of reproducing or multiplying, their errors are made with every cycle in their genetic code. Now, the difference between some viruses and, say, for example, DNA viruses and even us humans is that we have a corrective mechanism. So like a Tipex or something that sees an error, removes it or blanks it out. For a lot of viruses, especially RNA viruses, they don't have. So these errors are carried on into the next generation. Now, what happens is if those errors, by chance, confer on them an extra fitness capability in terms of their ability to infect and their ability to cause disease, then they get carried on. A lot of times, mutations do not provide any advantages, and they basically just die out because there's competition between all of this progeny, and the ones that are most competitive are the ones that get carried on in transmission and go on to maybe cause disease or cause infections.
Obviously, it would seem that we've let our guard down in Nigeria. in terms of observing the protocols that were put in place to prevent the spread of COVID-19. In many instances, the protocols are observed in breach rather than in practice. So do you think that we need to bring back these protocols to reinstate them and reinforce them? Or would this be another way of getting herd immunity?
The public health safety measures have not been taken away when we say reinstitute them. They're still there. And the world has been responding to a pandemic for over a year now. And yes, there is a bit of fatigue. People are tired. The problems with people not adhering to safety measures is not unique to Nigeria. Okay, it's a problem everywhere. And the difference, I guess, in some respects in Nigeria is we don't have, in some other places, people have been violent and they've attacked people when asked to put on their masks and all of that. That is, people here respond when you remind them to do that, depending on where the situation is. But certainly, the arrival or the emergence of this variant is a reminder that the battle is not over, that there's still a risk. The fact that we're thankfully not seeing as many severe cases and deaths does not mean that we're not getting infections, does not mean that the virus is not being transmitted. And what happens is that if we have unmitigated transmission of virus within the population, you always have a chance that a variant that may be more dangerous than the predecessor, or in fact change the pattern of disease for us, may emerge. And this is why we're calling on people to return to adherence to safety measures that are in place. And of course, vaccination, which is very important.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to hold your breath. Well, not for too long, because we're just going to take a commercial and we'll be back in a moment for more questions. Please stay with us. Dr. Ifedayo Adetifa, Director General, Nigeria Center for Disease Control, Ncdc, is still here with us in our studios. And we're taking questions or asking him for updates on the new Omicron variant of the COVID-19 virus. And I think one of the questions at the top of many people's minds is, there's been a campaign for people to get vaccinated. In fact, at the federal level, there was a deadline for people to get vaccinated, otherwise forfeit work. And now there are questions as to whether or not the vaccination which they take will be effective against this new variant of COVID-19.
Well, vaccinations remain a really powerful tool in our arsenal to prevent transmission, infection, disease, and ultimately death from caused by this virus. And we believe that even if this particular variant has any impact on vaccination, maybe reducing the protective effect, it's not going to be equal to full abrogation. So you might have something like this, theoretically speaking, if the vaccine was 90% protective against severe disease and death from Delta, maybe it becomes 80% protective. So the issue is, while we work out what kind of impact this strain would have on vaccine protective effects, the point remains that vaccines are effective, they are safe, and they confer protection. And people should go get them. Okay,
because, I mean, there has been lots of analysis about how, the spikes on this one tends to bypass, bypass the cells in the body that recognize COVID-19, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if you've seen some of that. And I'm sure there are people who are concerned about that.
The truth is, we do not know. This is a matter of ongoing investigation. Yes, there are mutations that have been seen in the spike proteins that theoretically may confer risk of increased transmissibility, may cause more severe disease, or may cause reduced protection from existing vaccines. But the reality is we don't know. What we know, for example, up to date, is that the cases currently affected by this variant have been mostly asymptomatic. They've been mostly young. There have been no deaths. Okay? So we are still watching. Obviously, you need some time to see what happens when it affects a slightly different pocket of population, like maybe the susceptibles or the elderly, but we don't know. But what we know is current public health safety measures and vaccination confer protection. It might not be 100% perfect. There's nothing that's 100% perfect, but the protection they offer is useful and beneficial, and people should adhere to those measures and make use of every opportunity that's currently provided, especially in Nigeria, to receive their vaccines.
Okay, and I'm sure that people are listening to you, and I hope that they take the heed to go and, get their shots. But how has the focus, because now when people talk about COVID-19, they think about the Ncdc, and all they think about many times is COVID-19. How has the focus on COVID-19 taken away focus from other diseases which are equally, perhaps even more lethal, and perhaps even more pervasive within our Nigerian context for the Ncdc?
Well, I'd like to reassure you and the public that while all of the public attention is on COVID, the Ncdc is juggling several balls in the air in terms of all the other priority diseases of public health importance that you refer to, and we are responding to all of them. So the talk is about COVID. Nobody actually knows that we have teams out in 5-6 states now helping with cholera response. We've had rapid response teams in all of the states that have had cholera outbreaks. We have incident managers for Lassa fever that respond to cases that are reported. We are currently preparing for the meningitis season, so all the refresher training, all the sensitization are in the work. So behind the scenes, and we would like all of these other areas to receive equal or even more attention, but we have no choice but to focus on all of the diseases that are likely to have public health impact on the country according to the mandate that we have been given. So while COVID hogs all of the headlines, we are looking after all of the other problems as well. And thankfully, the investments that are required or resources that are required to keep those responses going are still in place. Oh,
I think that was the most important thing. Much as, yes, you also want the public to take heed of these other, threats, so to speak, to public safety and health. There'll be questions as to whether because COVID has hugged the headlines so tightly and seems to be affecting everything. I mean, I was taking a look at the front pages of Vanguard this morning, and they had Omicron infects oil, affecting a major source of our own income. Whether or not this has also affected how much is going to these other areas of threat. But you are confirming that the fact that there has been a focus on COVID doesn't mean that these other threats, such as cholera, haven't received the kinds of money that they deserve. I'm being more specific now.
Yes, well, speaking from the NCDC, we have had we have the resources from government and with support of other partners that are typically involved to respond to cholera outbreaks where they are. Obviously, within states, I cannot speak for if they've had to rearrange their priorities in terms of COVID versus cholera, for example. But the cholera, speaking about cholera specifically, the problem with cholera is not related to the pandemic. Okay, the problem with cholera is mostly the absence of what would have been long-term and sustained investment in water, sanitation, and hygiene.
And we have been on this cholera matter for a while. I mean, we did try to put a bit of focus on it, but it would seem that the news of it, I mean, especially of deaths, pettered out. Was it that it just died down, or was there some response, or is this a resurgence? What precisely are we facing with cholera?
Well, the cholera has broken out in different states at different times. Some have had a really short outbreak, some have had a protracted outbreak. Some of that is also related to the season. So
what are you dealing with now? Is it a protracted outbreak, or are these fresh outbreaks?
We are dealing with some extended outbreaks, and we're dealing with some fresh outbreaks. There is some connection between this and the raining season, for example. So when you've got the rains and areas with open defecation and normal water sources are then flooded by rainwater and mix, and then you have a problem. Obviously, when the rain stops and that mixing stops, then you have a diminution in cases over time. So that's contributed to a reduction in cases, but in some places where maybe the seasonal element is not too much of the responsible, or indeed the seasons are different across the country, we have new outbreaks and we have protracted outbreaks, and we are responding to that. Sadly, cholera has actually killed more people than COVID so far. How many cases do we have now? How many fatalities have we recorded? We have had, I think, a little over 3,600 deaths, unfortunate Nigerians from cholera. 3,600 deaths? Plus. To cholera? Yes. From what period to what period? For the period of the year under review. So from the beginning of the year to date. What has been the response of subnationals who also have responsibility on health matters? Well, the response, our response are in support of states, local governments and areas where there have been these outbreaks. It's in conjunction with the local authorities. So the state epidemiologists, the commissioners for health and state governments are involved in that response. And we provide support, obviously. We collaboratively implement all the action plans that are necessary. What we have said and will continue to say to the authorities is that if we want to see a different picture next year, the investments in water, sanitation and hygiene should start now. It's a low-hanging fruit that will provide immense benefit and return in a very short period. So if you sort out potable water now, then you can be sure that the areas where we've had large outbreaks will not have cholera next year. Well, you already said that there are already preparations for meningitis ongoing, but I know that when the dry season begins to set in, alongside meningitis, a bigger threat, well, I don't know if it's bigger, but at least a major threat is Lassa fever, yeah. Which we have a season for as well, it will seem. Yeah. I don't know, there was talk around, is it development of vaccine for Lassa fever? I'm not sure which one of them now. Was it Lassa fever or, especially at the time when we're also talking about developing vaccines for COVID, there were talks around why we have not been able to find for Lassa fever. Are you aware of any development of a vaccine for Lassa fever? Well, we have ongoing research projects on Lassa fever in conjunction with partners, including like CEPI and FIND. And there are ongoing efforts to find a vaccine candidate. Now, vaccine development is a process. As we have seen with COVID, it will go as quickly or as slowly as you invest in it. And of course, depending on the pathogen characteristics, because some pathogens, regardless of the investment, they are just really difficult to understand. So we do not have a candidate yet. But there are concerted efforts to identify potential candidates for Lassa fever that can be brought forward into trials and hopefully licensure. What are some of the issues that you see on the horizon that give you cause for concern with regards to our public health? Well, there are several dimensions to that. We've got challenges, although not at the same level across country with the healthcare system. I mean, there have been significant investments in those to try and strengthen it, both with federal government investment and with partners. But we know that until you reach the last man or the last village, we would only be as strong as our weakest link. So we need to continue to invest there. We have strengthened surveillance, because surveillance is the idea of maintaining continuous watch over what's going on so that you can pick up very early new events, new signals that require investigation. We've strengthened that, especially with movement to digitized systems that allow for immediate review of the data and action. But what we need to do is to take that down to the lowest level so that all of that information can be seen live in real time and responded to. I was at another meeting yesterday where we were talking about progress towards our public health security plan. Obviously, that needs resources. We will need to continue to provide resources to fund health emergency preparedness and response activities. And that is an area of gap, despite the what is actually now unprecedented level of funding provided by the government compared to before, when nobody knew about the Ncdc. But we need even further commitments to that. And I think we will get some of that, and we'll continue to get some of that, hopefully.
Well, Dr. Efedayo Adetifa, Director General, Nigeria Center for Disease Control, welcome once again, and we wish you all the very best as you help us man our borders and man what is going on with regards to public health in Nigeria.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Oh, yes, you've just heard him. I called him the new Director General, but he'll be not so new anymore. He's the new Director General at Nigeria's Center for Disease Control. We'll leave it at that. We'll be continuing with another conversation on health because today is World AIDS Day and there will be lots of conversation as to where we are with monitoring cases of HIV in the country. Please stay with us. Well, I did say that we're going to stay on health matters, but this time around is around issues of HIV and AIDS. Yes, it's still very much around. Yes, there was a time when it would seem that it was as strong as COVID-19 is right now, and that seems to have tapered down. But the issues are still there, particularly in rural communities. Now, we're being told that at least 150,000 children are living with HIV/AIDS in Nigeria, with more than 40% unable to access treatment. And I think that this is something that should worry all of us this morning. Join us to discuss, how we came about this, what has happened, are we backsliding in terms of our awareness of HIV and AIDS, and what can be done to improve these numbers. Is Dr. Gambo Aliyu, who's the Director General of the National Agency for the Control of AIDS, NACA. Dr. Aliyu, you're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Well, what exactly has happened? It would seem that at some point everybody knew about AIDS and HIV, and we knew how to prevent it. But is it that we're throwing caution to the wind now?
No, not at all. In fact, people know more about HIV now than before, and they take more seriousness in terms of access to services that have been provided. And that is why we had recorded the successes we recorded in the last 3 years. The more you identify people living with HIV/AIDS, the more you succeed in stopping the spread of HIV. That's the way it works. If you want to stop HIV, two things are very critical, or three. One, stop mother-to-child transmission. Eliminate it. If you eliminate it, you will have a generation free of HIV. But if you're giving birth to a generation with HIV, then you're going to stay with HIV for a long time to come, because these individuals are just beginning a fresh life, and they're likely to stay 50, 60, 70 years alive with HIV in their bodies if we're not successful in getting a cure before then. And apart from that, then key affected population that are at increased risk of acquiring the disease and also transmitting it because of the behavior that is associated with the business they do, like sex workers, like men who have sex with men, and injection drug users, and transgender. So these are people at higher risk of acquiring HIV. They are the drivers of HIV in the community. And now you come to people that don't have access more, like the incarcerated individuals in the correction centers, adolescents and young persons, people that don't follow what we do on television, and they usually are not seen where we do our campaign, awareness campaign and the rest of it. They are usually found around the social media networks and the rest of it. So these are individual groups that going forward now for the next 18 months are our targets. I want to make sure we stop the tap running in terms of people who are acquiring HIV among them and the ones that are transmitted. For the general population, we are good. In fact, we are much, much better than we were 3 years back.
It's certainly heartwarming news to hear that at least there's been some improvement and a greater awareness of HIV, but it's also worrying that you know, children are now the unsuspecting recipients of, you know, an illness that they knew nothing about. So how are we tackling that? I mean, because it would seem that a lot of where the problems are in rural areas where a lot of mothers do not have access to medical care before they give birth.
What we saying now is, and the awareness we are creating is that every unborn child has right to be protected from HIV. And that right will only be guaranteed by the mom and dad. If a lady is pregnant today, it's the responsibility of the couple to make sure that that pregnancy is tested for HIV. And if it is HIV positive, that baby should be protected from having HIV. We can do it. We can prevent that baby from having HIV at the time of delivery, after delivery, until the child or the baby is 18 months. So that portion, we have some kind of disconnection in the sense that our access to pregnant mothers is limited to those that show up at facility for antenatal visit. It may surprise you to say half of pregnant women don't come actually for antenatal visit. So for those half that don't come up for antenatal visit, you have no way to access them. But now we have re-strategized, learning from what we've seen the last 2 years, the harvest we have had with community work. During COVID-19 lockdown, you know, we were forced to go much further to the community. We had that plan even before COVID-19. After our survey that shows where the issues are pinching, you know, nationally, where the infection is spreading faster. Our plan was to go closer to the community, saturate those communities. So, but we did it more with COVID-19. And what we found was that we had successes in identifying people living with HIV and bringing them to care, successes that we have never seen before. On the average, every year, we identify between 50 to 60,000 new infections and put them on treatment. The year ending December 2020, during the COVID, when COVID began and as COVID progressed, we recorded 350,000 new, which no other country has done that before COVID and now with COVID. Countries
350,000 new cases.
New cases.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a very good thing because you see what is happening is that if you look at our epidemic, before the time we did these all-inclusive measures to find out what is the situation of HIV in Nigeria, that was in 2018, we were thinking we had up to 3.5 million people living with HIV. But after that survey, we came to realize that what we have is a little less than 2 million, 1.8, 1.9. But that 1.8, 1.9 has eluded us from the time we started fighting HIV vigorously in 2005 up to that 2018. It was after 2018 we now go out to look for these cases vigorously because when we had the survey, we now realized that we had about 800,000 plus on treatment. So if I have 800,000 plus on treatment and I have 1.9 million, it means I have 1 million more to go. Where do I find them? Why was I able to find them all these years before 2018? And now, immediately after 2018, when we started the community works and we intensified during COVID, we call it integrated services, we were able to identify these people because perhaps people feel uncomfortable to come to our facility to test for HIV. They may also feel uncomfortable to come and take this medication. So what we decided was, okay, so here is the HIV test at your door front. You can even do it by yourself. You can sit down in your room and use self-test kits, use your saliva, test and find out whether you have HIV. If you have HIV, come to us.
Is stigmatization still a thing?
Stigmatization has been a problem for the last 40 years in the fight against HIV. And for the last 20 years or so that we have vigorously fought HIV in Nigeria, stigmatization has been the barrier between us and identifying this 1.9 million that live with HIV.
Is it going down? That's the question.
It's going down. That is what this harvest is telling us. If it is not going down, we cannot find 350,000 within a span of 18 months and place on treatment. So what is happening is that people now are beginning to think and believe that HIV is no longer that it is the fear before. It actually doesn't kill anymore now, and it doesn't make you look sick, and you can actually live with it like you live with any other chronic illness. And people have been living with it now for 20 years, 30 years, and they don't look different from you and myself.
What's the message on your T-shirt? Who is it for, which is the theme of this year? Who is it targeted to? And inequality and AIDS through sustainable financing.
Okay, so these laggards. You know, we have 1.8, 1.9 million that live with the virus. Now we have on our record that we can count 1.6. Where are the balance of 200 to 300,000?
No, I just want to know who it is targeted. Is that government or the people?
These are the people that don't have access to our services by nature of their social behavior, men who have sex with men, female sex workers, transgender, injection drug users, mothers that are pregnant that we haven't found and we don't have access to. Yeah.
So it's to everybody. I'm totally out of time, Dr. Ali. This message is to everybody then, I take it?
It's not to everybody, but it's to particular population groups. And these are the population groups I'm listing in.
Okay.
Pregnant women.
Okay.
Yeah, key population, adolescents and young persons.
Thank you so much for coming on this morning. Dr. Gambo Aliyu is the Director General, National Agency for the Control of AIDS, NACA. Thank you so much for the work that you do at NACA, and we certainly will keep tabs on the progress that we all make as a country.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Well, that's it for this segment as well, and I guess for the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
Keep it up with Channels Television as we bring you updates on the go. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day.